my gosh, that was so fast.
That was really
I'm
fast.
like, oh my gosh, it's been 5 minutes.
It's
Holy
over? How did that happen?
I don't know. Give me a second. I'm still like, I just finished putting all the words down on the video description. So I'm adding our thumbnail, which you know what? I need to like make a mental note. I need to go in and change all the thumbnails that it says like lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, blah, blah, blah. So that way, that'll make it easier for everybody. So hello, Chrissy. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am doing wonderful myself. It's been a busy week. This is like really the first really big week back for me without any track, without any travel. It's like the first introduction. It feels like the introduction to 2021 for me, because since 2021, like my life has been crazy. Like this has been the first like real average, like normal sort of week for me. And at the same time, it's been super crazy, but in a good way. You know that you and I talked yesterday, like you got your first introduction to the, okay, this is how Marley really works. Crazy, sort of crazy. But it's good. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm good. We are just settling into summertime and we're loving it. We tend to hibernate over here in the winter time. And we don't really do much, but then the summer comes and we love to be out exploring and doing all the fun things. So we're really enjoying this break, this really nice hot weather. We can go swimming. We've headed to the beach already this year once. It's been good.
That's so cool.
That's a really fun segue into something coming up next week.
Which I almost forgot about. Like,
I know, I'm really excited though. So,
you know, it popped up on my Facebook memory and I was like, oh my gosh, we didn't do this yet.
Yes. So we have everybody voting over in the Marley Minions Facebook group on your favorite picture for flat Marley. If you don't know what flat Marley is, so a few years ago, Caitlin did this. If you're familiar with the book Flat Stanley, it's a children's book. A little boy, he's squished by a bulletin board. And so he realizes that he can then be mailed all over to visit people. And it's kind of the same concept, except for you won't have to mail Flat Marley anywhere. You guys can just take her out and about and take her on your adventures with you and take pictures of all your summer fun. There'll be lots of fun giveaways that we're going to do over the summer. Then we'll have the travel trophy. It will be a grand prize that I'll give away in September for the person who took Marley on the most adventures. So all the details about that will come out on the blog next Tuesday, the 15th. It'll start next week and then it'll run through August 31st.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's so fun. So the Flat Marley thing, it was totally something Caitlin's kids were doing it. She was like, so fun to do because they did Flat Stanley.
Yeah.
And so watching people take my little Bitmoji image and the things that people do with it, like please keep it clean. I like a good joke, but let's keep it clean. And we've never had any issue or anything, but it is so fun to watch things. It's so cool. Oh, I don't have a video on. Thank you. Somebody just mentioned it to me that I forgot. I know, right? I forgot that I turned off my video. I'm coming.
I had it on speed. There we go.
I'm right there, y'all. Hi. I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know, Laura. So the Flat Stanley, Caitlin's kids were doing it and she was like, we should do Flat Marley.
Yeah.
True story. My biggest fear where people are gonna be like, oh, where in the world is Fat Marley? Being a big girl my whole life, I'm always like really careful about things like that. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go with it. It'll be okay.
Let's just do it.
So hashtag where is Flat Marley? It'll be good. All right, so we're gonna gallery view. There we are. Now we can see both of us. That'll be great.
Do you get cicadas in Indiana?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
And can I tell you that I've never seen one before? And one of my track coaches found one on the bus and he ate it.
Ew.
Ate it. Like he was just like, you want to see me eat it? Like to all the girls. And he ate it like it's a delicacy.
That's so gross.
Disgusting.
So gross.
Disgusting. Anyway.
They are literally like swarming here in Maryland. So if you like open our back door or if you open our windows, all you can hear is cicadas. They're crashing into the house all day.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. So it's called like Brood X. So like every 17 years, a swarm of them emerge. And so in Maryland right now, it's so bad that they pulled up on radar. And the weather people were like, this is not rain, this is cicadas. Like, that's how bad they are. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I don't think I'd go
crazy.
outside.
No,
you know
that's
what?
why I'm hibernating. I'm
it
hiding.
Feels very much like par for the course for the last couple of years.
Right.
So is this like the locust sort of thing that's happening? I mean, I get it that it's a natural thing. This happens all the time.
Yes.
But
So this is like a big deal. And I guess they're supposed to disappear in 6 weeks. So I think it's been like a month. It's time for them to go. I'm ready for them to leave. When you drive, they smash against your windshield. I mean, it's terrible. Yes, it's so bad. Well, I thought of it because I just let my dogs out before we started this and I had to yell at them the whole time. Don't eat that. Don't eat that. Don't go near that.
Who'd have thought I'd have to yell that to a track coach though? Don't eat that.
Right.
Don't put that in your mouth. Don't put that in your mouth.
Don't put that in your mouth. Knock it off.
All right. So I have something to show you. Are you ready?
Okay.
I'm going to show it to you.
I'm ready. Yay!
Look at me, everybody.
Love it. Love it.
How cute. Look, I want to show everybody.
Oh, it's so cute. And I love that color.
It really is. I have not made enough stuff in this color. And it's one of my favorite. I mean, I love all the colors in the Chic Sheep line. This is one of my favorites. And I definitely have not made enough stuff with it. It is so
I
pretty.
love that color so much.
So it's done blocking. When I blocked it, guys, I just washed it and I laid it down flat, but I still have it like there's my beginning tail and there's my end tail. So I have to weave those in, but it is complete.
It's beautiful.
I think it's gorgeous. It is so pretty. Let me see if I can turn on the view down here so that they can get this view. Like you can see the close up if you guys are looking at. It's just so nice. It's so lovely. And then everybody in the Marley's Minions group, they've been posting pictures of their finished ones. Some people did color work. Obviously you did color work, but other people like, man, they just went all out. Like it's so exciting to watch everybody. Super cool.
I know. And I've loved seeing everybody's progress. I've loved watching everybody really, I mentioned this in my email today. You can really see the progress in mine. And that's exciting to me. My beginning ribbing is like real wonky and my finishing ribbing is like perfect. So you can see over the weeks, the progress that I made. It's visual. You can see it.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Do you have yours there with you?
I do. I didn't block mine yet, but I'll show you what it looks like on me. Let me grab it.
All right. So while she's grabbing that,
I was working on casting on the hat because I look really crazy when I cast on. So I like to do that before we're on video. So this is mine. It's a little wonky because it's not been blocked yet. But look how cute and colorful and fun this is.
Oh my gosh. Fun? I love that.
Isn't it so? I mean, it's wonky because I got to block it still, but
is that so Sterling Vineyard, Mimosa, Mai Tai, Poolside? Is that Sangria?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful colors.
Love them. So much fun. So bright. I decided to do Sangria by itself for my hat. So my whole hat will be in this.
I'm going to use Poolside.
Yeah. See? So pretty.
I was like, I need to switch it up. But then at the same time, I have a little yarn left over from my second ball. So I was like, maybe I'll throw in some color work there. I just don't want to upset people if they don't have more than one color. So maybe it'll be like hey, if you want to try this optional,
there you go. Extra credit.
I don't know. We'll try something. Because I think it would be fun. Actually, you know, it'd be really cool. I'm totally just this off the cuff. It would be fun after our ribbing is done with the hat if we did what's called a Latvian braid around the ribbing for the hat. Ooh. That would be very pretty.
I want to learn that.
2 colors. It is so easy and it's fun to do. Ooh. And it's good. Like I have a whole video out on it too, so people could sit back and watch it. And there's a lot of like capital K knitters out there that don't know how to do it. So you guys could be like, oh, you don't know how to do a Latvian braid? I did that on my first hat. So sorry. Like total pretty woman. Yeah, right. Pretty woman moment. Another one. Another pretty woman moment. huge. I love it. Let's see here. Lunacra. I'm probably butchering your name. I'm sorry. She says, or she says, do the ribbing in vineyard and the rest in blue. I totally could do that. I'm loving the idea of doing the braid. I might end up doing that. Somebody said, I love the Latvian braid. You know what? Because it's cool. And it's like one of those things not many people know how to do. It'd be a cool thing to do. A lot of people are saying yes to the braid. We might say yes to the braid. That might happen, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's do it.
So if you remember last week, we had a lot of chit chat, and that was the whole point of the entire lesson. I'm going to use that term loosely. Last week, it was more of a community building. Let's touch base, talk about what we've learned, and go from there in last week's lesson. Because we know how to do ribbing. And I was like, you know what, let's learn a different bind off just so that we have it to add in there. And I threw that in at the end of the lesson. You guys remember. This week, we are going to have some chit chat. Obviously, we've already been discussing kind of touching base with one another, but I am going to talk a lot about the hat this week. Even though we all know how to cast on, we know how to do the knit, we know how to jump in with the ribbing, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about taking this cowl pattern, the BiCrafty Community Cowl that we created. And you'll notice that I essentially wrote a pattern for you in today's blog post. I called it the Matchy, talk about a name, Matchy BiCrafty Community Hat. And that was like my way of saying, hey, we're going to take what you learned in the cowl, we're going to apply it to make it into a hat. So if you wanted one to be matchy, this is how you would do it. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And at the same time, I'm going to discuss how you could do that with other patterns. And this is very similar to what you would do in crochet. If you found maybe a stitch pattern you really liked in a blanket and you wanted to change it up and put it into a hat or a cowl or something. Obviously, there are changes there in the sense that with crochet, you have your turning change you have to account for, and like maybe partial stitches or whatnot. When you're working in the round with knitting, we don't have to worry too much about that. So that's convenient. So I'm going to discuss that. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the hat. And I want to get ideas of what you guys want to learn for this next step of the Knitters Bootcamp, BiCrafty Bootcamp. Like I have an idea of what each section I want to teach you. Like I want to introduce cables in this portion. I want to introduce how to do the lace stitch, because that introduces increases and decreases, which you then work in through the shaping at the top of the hat for the crown is what it's called. So I want to do those types of things, but I love the idea of doing the Latvian braid. I think that would be a really cool, fun addition to this. It'd be something that you wouldn't have to do, but if you wanted to do, it'd be cool to add into it. But I'm kind of just curious where everybody else is. What are you thinking? What do you want to learn? If you are looking for the link for today's lesson for the Matchy BiCrafty Community Hat, which I need to put up on Ravelry along with the BiCrafty Community Cowl. I haven't done that because I was waiting to get a picture. I will add those here real soon, I promise. The link is in the video description box already on this video. So if you're looking for it, it's right down there. And I'm pretty sure Catherine linked to it to the main blog post as well. If you guys remember on the Google hack, hopefully you have created a Marley Bird folder in your bookmarks on your Google Chrome, and just always add your BiCrafty Bootcamp main page, and you'll always be able to find your links there to each lesson along the way. You guys are doing great with all that, so that's awesome. Chrissy did mention the newsletter that she sends out every Wednesday regarding BiCrafty Bootcamp. Right now, obviously, it's for crocheters who want to be knitters. When we transition to knitters who want to be crocheters, you guys will still all be a part of that. And the great thing about all of you crocheters, you'll be able to come in and help the knitters because you'll be able to speak their language. You'll be like, oh, look, this is what you're doing. And like when you do this single crochet, it's just like when you do this in knitting, you know what I mean? So that'll be a great way for you to connect with more knitters, and we'll have a more tight knit, no pun intended, community. if you're not part of that newsletter, it is a separate one. Yes, I have like 3-4 newsletters, you guys. I get it. But we try and keep them specific to various things. Very seldom do I do a mass email to all the newsletters. Like I take all the emails from each newsletter and send one out. I usually keep each one specific. So that way you aren't bombarded with a lot of information you don't want. So the link to that is on the main blog post. You can find it there, no problem. Chrissy spends a lot of time with that, so that would be good for you to check out. Okay, am I missing anything over here in the chat? When I'm talking, I see the chat scrolling, and I'm like, what do they say? What do they say? What do they say? Are you able to see over there? What are they?
I can't see the chat today because I'm on my phone and not my laptop.
Right. I forgot.
But
okay,
usually I can see it.
Just throw it at us, even stranded color work. Now, Cindy, I am with you. I thought about stranded color work, like really simple stranded color work.
Yes.
I think would be really good, especially like if we did, all right, work with me here, guys. If we did the Latvian braid next, we could do color work right after that, and then do another Latvian braid on top of it. So it'd be like ribbing, Latvian braid, color work, Latvian braid, which would be it'd be a lot of homework next week, but it'd be worth it. And then we could go into, because I wanted to break it up into sections just like before, and we could do like maybe a mini cable. We could do the lace portion. We don't even have to do the lace portion on this. We could do the lace portion on something else too to keep this more solid. That might be a better idea, but we would still talk about increases and decreases. I don't know. I love that idea. Valerie says, I have been dreaming of cables. Thought that would be way too advanced. Girl, Valerie, cables are so easy. You're going to be like, that's it. And I'm going to be like, yep, that's it. Like they're so easy.
Well, and that's what I think will be awesome about this hat. So you can do the matchy hat. If you want to do the matchy hat and have a matching hat to your cowl, totally get that. I love matching. But this too, if we branch out and start doing things like the Latvian braid, like the color work, like the cables, all that kind of stuff, we're learning all the skills that we need to have in our tool belt to go out and branch out after this. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. So with that, Lacey says not a fan of lace on the hat. I get it. I totally get it. And you know what else I could do, guys, is I could do a lesson about very simple lace increases and decreases and coupling them up, and then direct you to a pattern that has lace in it, which is
we could even do like a lace shawl as our last project in August.
We could do that. So like, here's in my beginner knitting classes I used to teach at KnitKnack, our final project was called the Jerry hat. And so, because it incorporated everything they learned throughout the class with the exception of cables. And it's ribbing, it's stockinette, it's lace, it's the shaping of the crown of the hat, it's, circulars, it's everything you could possibly do. So we could just direct you to that hat pattern if you guys want to, but still, instruct you on how to do lace. Or like you said, we could do something simple lace. Like lace is not that difficult. It's actually, I think lace is more difficult to fix, not impossible, more difficult. And as long as you keep track of where you are and you make sure that you have an increase to correspond for every decrease and vice versa, it's beautiful. And lace is magical. Like, if you do lace with like a wool and a silk or something, it doesn't look like much as you're knitting with it. But then when you wash and block it, the blocking opens up those holes, just like if you're doing like a doily, you guys, and you block your doily, like your cotton doily, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, it's like this beautiful magical piece just happened. And that's what happens when you're knitting lace. It's transcending. It's just fantastic. It's really cool. Anyways, all of that. All right. So everybody is saying hi. They're excited. They just want to learn. They just want to learn everything. I'm here for you.
I want to know it all.
I want to know it all. Okay. So before we jump in, no, you know what? I'm not going to say before. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to talk about the needles here in a minute. I want to talk about the cowl and the matchy part, if you're good with that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to transition down to speaker view and make it so we're down here. Okay.
And I'm going to mute me so that I don't accidentally take the screen.
All right. I'm getting better at this, I think. Okay. So I'm pretty sure I'm on speaker view and you guys can see my lovely cowl right here. Okay. So as you guys know, when we worked on the cowl, we started off with our cast on. We did the long tail cast on. I'm going to have you do the long tail cast on again for the hat because I want it to match enough to this that it will look good. And the long tail cast on just gives us a beautiful edge, as you can see here, especially as we knit that first round. Remember, I talked to you guys about I love to knit the first round after I do a cast on because I think it just makes that nice little curl there. I really like it. If you don't like it, if you want to jump right into knit one, purl one, ribbing, you can do that. It doesn't matter to me, but I like that. So when we work on our hat this week, we are going to cast on our stitches and we're going to knit one round and jump into knit one, purl one, ribbing. So you know how to do the homework for this week, which is fantastic. We'll talk about the size of needles you'll need and all that stuff here in a minute. But if you wanted to make the matchy, I'm going to pull up on my screen the instructions that I wrote out. So if you are looking at the lesson 11, which is, what did she title it this week? It's titled, It's Time to Start Your BiCrafty Bootcamp First Knit Hat, lesson 11. So you'll see on there, if you looked at first thing this morning, you didn't see much because I was debating whether I wanted to give a pattern or not, but I chose that I did, or I decided that I would. So the Matchy BiCrafty Community Hat essentially tells you, hey, you're going to use some chic sheep yarn or equivalent. You're going to use size 7 and size 8 needles for the hat. And the reason for that is I want the ribbing to be tighter than the body. It just makes the hat fit nicer around the head, in my opinion. Now, do you have to do that? No, you don't. You could start with the size 8 and then transition to a size 8. That's perfectly fine. You do what works best for you. But I will have you start with a size 7 for the ribbing, just to make it a little bit more snug to fit on your head nice. And then you'll transition to the larger needle to work the rest of your pattern. So I did give you a gauge, and that's something that is important when you're making a hat. Because, all right, so I'm transferring back to my face real quick. We haven't talked about gauge too much when we were working on our bug rugs or our cowl, because those things didn't need to fit. But now we're transitioning to something that does need to fit us. We want the hat to fit us. We don't want it to go down around like our chin or anything, right? So it's going to be important that we get gauge. We should probably talk about how to measure gauge. So let me go ahead. I will grab a gauge measure here. I had one out. I'm going to have to use a tape measure. I will talk about that. So you're going to have to measure gauge on your piece to make sure that your piece is going to fit. Ideally, just like in crochet, I mean, hat in crochet and a hat in knitting, you want them to fit the same, right? So usually about a 20-inch circumference around the head fits an average size adult. 22 inches is about a large size adult, okay? Anything more than that, you have somebody with a bigger head and you're making it more custom fit. But you definitely want the ribbing portion not to be so tight that it's going to restrict, circulation in the head, but you want it tight enough that it's going to fit. And the body can be a little bit more blossomy, more bloomy. So that's why I like to start with a smaller needle on the ribbing and then transition to a larger needle for the body. Just FYI, I don't do that on all of my patterns, and it's not something that a lot of designers do. Like it's hit or miss on depending on what the pattern is for me. So I just want to put that out there. I don't do that on every pattern, but I do want to do it on this one. Okay. I just lost my train of thought completely. So give me just a minute. I got to pull it back together. So I gave you the gauge. So what you're going to do is you can conveniently take gauge on your cowl that you finished. And so super convenient if you're going to make the matchy cowl. You can, or not the matchy hat, you can take gauge on your cowl. So I don't have to make you do a gauge swatch. Remember, we talked about this cowl being like a large gauge swatch for you. So you can measure what it is on your cowl. Now, what's really awesome is I gave you what my gauge is for the hat that I'm going to make, right? So 18 stitches in the seed stitch for me equals 4 inches on a size 8 needle. If you don't get that. Say you get more stitches per inch, you're a tighter knitter than I am, or you get fewer stitches per inch, you're a looser knitter than I am. Just with general knowledge of understanding how gauge and how a pattern is written up works, you can adjust the numbers to fit what you need to do with the instructions that I gave you in that blog. I essentially told you, hey, if we know that our ultimate piece needs to measure, let's just pick 20 inches. And let's say that you were getting 16 stitches for 4 inches. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. So you're getting 4 stitches per inch. So 4 stitches per inch, and we want our ultimate piece to be 20 inches. So we would take 4 times 20, right? So we would have 80. So you would have 80 stitches. So your hat, you would want 80 stitches to fit the size 20 circumference, right? Does that make sense? Are you with me on that? So having that general knowledge will allow you to take this basic rough pattern that I put in there for the Matchy BiCrafty Community Hat and tailor fit it to what gauge you get. Okay, so you can use your cowl, measure your gauge, and go from there, which is super convenient and a great way to be working into a hat project, especially since we already have our gauge swatch done. And by doing this big cowl, we have our gauge swatch done in the round because we made our cowl in the round and our hat is going to be in the round. So we are really going to get a very accurate gauge for our hat ultimately. Everybody with me on that so far, okay? I want to make sure everybody's with me on that. So even though I gave you, hey, all the gauge I'm giving you is 18 stitches for 4 inches. If you get a different gauge, all you need to do is just change the numbers that I have listed below. The numbers that are listed below that gauge given are based on the gauge I gave, but you can change those as long as you keep the numbers divisible by 5 and 4. 5 and 4. The reason is all of the stitch patterns we used, they have a multiple of 5, 2, and 4. All right. So if you have a multiple of 4, obviously you're going to have a multiple of 2, right? So if you keep your stitch pattern in a multiple of 5 and 4, you're going to work. So if you happen to have 80 stitches, is that going to work with all of the stitch patterns we used? I'll give you guys a minute to think. Is 80 divisible by 5? Is it divisible by 4? Yes, yes, it is. So that number would work. Now, if we got, let's see, for whatever reason, you got 86, that number isn't divisible by 5 and 4. So you would have to decide, okay, do I want to round down to 84? Well, that's not divisible by 5. Do I want to round down to 80? Or do I want to round up to 90? Well, is that divisible by 4? You see what I mean? Like you have to start making decisions there. The reason I'm pointing this out is if you're one of those situations where you have 86 and you have to decide, where do I want to go? Something you could do is, because we have these stitch multiples of 2 and 4 and 5, is you could, once you learn how to increase and decrease, change up the number of stitches you have in each section to accommodate the multiple you need for that section. So that way, if you didn't have 80 to start and you didn't want to, and you don't have to keep 80 the whole way through, maybe you started with 86. And then let's say that you increased to 90 for the 5 stitch multiple. And let's say you decreased down to 88 for the 4 stitch multiple or whatever. I have no idea. You can make these decisions for yourself, but you can change those up throughout the entire project. So all of that is to say, just because your number might not initially meet the multiple criteria that you need throughout, that doesn't mean you're dead in the water. Everybody with me on that? This should be something that you understand based on crochet, because it's the same concept. If we're doing a lacy stitch in crochet, and then because in crochet we deal with stitch repeats, right? We don't really deal with incremental stitch, like it's not like 4 stitches per inch. It would be like 1 stitch repeat per inch, right? We deal with repeats. So we could say, okay, this lace pattern has 5 repeats, and then Tracy is telling me that 90 is divisible by 4. Great. There you go. I have no idea. Whatever. I mean, I'm not going to do math in my head. So let's say you have 5 stitch repeats in crochet, and then you go into your next stitch multiple, but the numbers aren't going to be the same. So you have to adjust that to make that stitch pattern fit this stitch pattern. We do that all the time in crochet. It's the same thing in knitting. It just happens to be easier in knitting because you're dealing with very simple stitches when we're just doing knits and purls. When we transfer into cables or lace or anything with shaping, that's when things get a little bit different, a little bit harried. But things simple like this, that's not too difficult at all. It's not too difficult at all. Everybody with me so far? Christy, how are we doing? I'm going to go back to gallery so that you can jump in as well.
I'm good. Yes, that makes sense. That's really good to know because you don't think about how often you do that in crocheting, how often you are doing the math real quick because you're just thinking of the pattern sequence. But that does make sense. That's good to know for knitting that it's kind of the same concept.
Yeah. And it's super easy when we all kind of talked about the long slip texture stitch, right? It kind of sucked in a little bit. We could have increased our whole stitch count maybe by 10. And maybe that would have made some people who theirs sucked in a little bit, it would have made theirs fit a little bit better. Because the whole concept there is that their long slip texture stitch had a tighter gauge than their other stitches. So by increasing the number of stitches as they were doing that repeat or that stitch pattern, that made their gauge meet the other gauges. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's the same thing. So all of this is to say, if you wanted to make a matchy BiCrafty Community Hat, wow, that's a lot. You can absolutely do that. And I gave you numbers based on my gauge, but you can change those with your gauge. So like I'll do a share screen real quick. So can you guys see this? Are you guys seeing this? Mm-hmm. So this is obviously where this starts. Matchy BiCrafty Community Hat Pattern. And I even said, let's make this easy for you and just give you numbers to be specific about this. I wanted to make sure you knew this was the yarn I used. Here are the 2 needles I used for this particular pattern. Here's the gauge that I'm basing all the numbers off of. And this would fit an average size adult. Okay. So I did put in here a make one increase because you would have to know how to do that, because you'll see here, not only did I use smaller needles for the ribbing, but I used fewer stitches because I wanted my ribbing to be that much more snug. And that was because I did use Chic Sheep. And if you guys have washed and blocked your wool, you'll notice that it has a little bit of stretch to it, right? It comes back and it has, but I like my hats to make sure when I'm wearing them, they're not going to fall down over my eyes. So I liked my ribbing to be in a little bit. Now, do you have to start with 90? Absolutely not. You could just start with the 100. Instead of doing that make one increase there on round 8, you could just start with 100 and then just do knit 1, purl 1 for those 8 rounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, not 8 rounds. It would be 7 rounds because the first round is just knit. But I wanted to explain why I chose 90 stitches to start off with is because I like my ribbing a little bit tighter on my hats around my head, especially when I'm using Chic Sheep, because I'm very, newsflash, I'm very familiar with the yarn and I know that fits me very well. So I like that.
Well, and that's good too for those that who don't want to start with the smaller needle, right? So that's already like a built-in fail safe for them. If they choose not to start with the smaller needle and they just jump right in with the 90, then they're already still going to get kind of that fit.
Snug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Then you'll see on the body, I literally didn't write out the instructions. Like if this were a standalone pattern, I would go in and write down all the instructions, but I just linked to where you guys already were following instructions. So I'm like, hey, as you're working these, instead of making them the same width that you made them on your cowl, unless you really want your piece to be that slouchy, if you want the hat to be that slouchy, make them the same size. I don't care. But I tried to kind of say, hey, if you make them about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, you could go to 2 inches. It's totally your choice. But I've just tried to give you kind of a gauge of how big to make each section. And then just follow along. Like you do your seed stitch. You already know how to do that. Do your double moss stitch. And you'll see here, I put the multiple of each one right next to it. So that way it could help you if you needed to make adjustments. The extra credit, this what did we call that? The brick stitch didn't we call that the brick?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm going to call that brick. I'm going to just change it up. Brick stitch. And then I'll go like this. So the brick stitch, that's the one that's the culprit. That's the one that was the multiple of 5 that I threw in there after I did a particular Michael's class. Then the seersucker stitch, and then the long slip texture stitch. Now here's the thing. If you guys were to skip one of these, this is the one I would skip. The long stitch texture stitch. I would skip that one. I would just skip it, put something else in there. I mean, that's my own personal preference. That's what I would do. I'll leave it up to you. But when it comes to the crown, to make it easier, I have you going back to seed stitch. So you have all those sections, and on the crown, I have you go back to seed stitch. And you'll see here that it says, follow these instructions, change the double points when the stitches no longer fit comfortably on your 16-inch circular, so on and so forth. Obviously, you guys don't know how to do that yet. We will be learning that in this series of lessons, but you have the written instructions here of exactly what you would do. And it gives you the stitch counts every time you work your decrease, so you know how many stitches you're going to have, and then you do your simple finishing. So right here, here's a whole hat right here. And hopefully going through all of this helps all of you understand how you could not only change any cowl pattern practically into any hat pattern you want, but you could design your own hats, y'all. Like, grab yourself a stitch dictionary and start plug and play, man. It's really that easy. And the fact that you guys know how to read your stitches, like say you're working along, you're like, man, I just don't like that. You can unknit it. You can rip it out and put them back on your needles because you know how to do all of that. Like start off with your ribbing. Start off with 2x2 ribbing. You have to have, remember 2x2 ribbing is a multiple of 4. So you have to have a multiple of 4 for your ribbing to start. You could do 3x5 ribbing. So a multiple of 5. Like you could do anything you want with everything you've learned right now. Like the amount of information you have stored in your little knitter's toolbox, guys, it's bigger than what you are seeing just on the screen, because you guys are bringing the knowledge from your crochet experience into this. And all of a sudden, this is like, should be like mushroom cloud opening up for you. Like, oh my gosh, the amount of things I can make right now are just endless.
Yep.
And is anybody else feeling that way right now?
Yes, 100%. I was looking over today's lesson, and it like dawned on me like, oh, I know what all this means. Like I'm reading this and I know what it all means, and I know what it's going to look like, and I know what I need to do. Like that's exciting. It is.
You know what else is, if you notice, this is the first lesson that I really wrote it out like a knitting pattern. Yeah, I didn't write it out like I was talking to you. I wrote it out like a knitting pattern, so that way you can become familiar with actual knitting patterns. I mean, do I want you to always come to me for patterns? Absolutely. But do I want to restrict you to not be able to read other patterns by not teaching you how to? Absolutely not. Right. That's not cool. I'm not that person. Right. So I'm going to make sure I'm using the correct terminology. I'm showing you the correct way things are written. And there's a standard of the way things are written. You know, yeah, there's different ways I might call something differently, but I'm always going to tell you what the standard is, because that's important. I do that when I teach crochet, because it drives me insane when the instructors don't do that, when they think they're so, you know, oh, I'm so cool, I can call it this, or I'm going to call it this way because it helps people understand. Yeah, I get it. But you still have to instruct them the proper way it's done, or the proper way it's called. So that way, when they come across it in a pattern, they know what they're doing. Like it just drives me insane. So I make sure I do that specifically with knitting also. So I felt like this was my, I don't know if it was subtle or not, but this was my transition of, hey guys, we're going to start reading these like actual knitting patterns from here on out, because that's going to help you be able to go and look at other knitting patterns and understand how to do them. And like you said, like it's, I guess you didn't say this, I say this all the time, it's like the matrix becomes clear. All of this stuff that at one point in time was just like gibberish to you, because it was just the 2 sticks. I don't use 2 sticks. I use a hook. Don't talk to me. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I'm bilingual. Like I got that.
Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. So one of the things that I love, and I wish Catherine was here today because she really can talk about this so much better than I can, but I love the fact that learning something right now. I mean, I'm 36, right? So I'm not super old, but like, I'm not super young either. I'm kind of right there in the middle, right? It's so good for your brain to learn something like this. It stretches your mental capacity. It's so good for your mental health. It's a fantastic thing when you learn something new and you feel accomplished. And I keep saying this in my BiCrafty emails, don't give up. If you're slower than everyone else, if your stitches don't look like everyone else's, it really doesn't matter, because this truly is about progress and not perfection. No one looks at a blanket that someone made them 10 years ago or 20 years ago and says, oh, her stitch definition was bad. Nobody cares. You're going to notice your mistakes, but that's what makes you unique. It makes your work special. So all of this is so exciting to me, knowing that I have developed a new craft in my life that I can use to do things, to make things for people, to bless other people. And it's great for my mental acuity. It's fantastic. I'm excited for everyone here.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. All right. So we talked a lot about the Matchy BiCrafty Community Hat. And with that comes a new supply list, right? So we have materials all along. We've talked about needing 3 balls to complete the hat and the cowl. The cowl for me used about 1.5 balls of chic sheep. So I have about 1.5 balls left over. For my hat, if I were to make the Matchy hat, because I'd be making my sections a little bit smaller, I haven't made one yet, so I don't know for sure. I think I could get by with 1 ball, but knowing that I have that 1/2 ball extra is a secure thing for me. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. If I make it a little bit bigger, I'm not out of not out of luck. And at the same time, I have enough yarn left over that if I wanted to make a pom-pom, I could, or I mean, honestly, I would probably go buy one of those really fancy pom-poms because I love them. Like they are, I'm addicted to them. They're like Furbies to me, man. I just love them. They're the best. So that's the materials list. Do you have to use chic sheep? Absolutely not. But you guys, it's my yarn. That's why I'm going to use it. And plus I really love it.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because it's my yarn. Like I love this yarn. You guys have heard this story before. I chose this yarn as a knitter crocheter, choosing what I want to work with. That's how I chose it. And it's fabulous. But no, you can use any yarn you want. You could use anything from Yarnspirations, anything from We Crochet, anything from Knit Picks, anything from Jimmy Bean's Wool, anything you want that fits the criteria as far as being a worsted weight, hits the gauge that you want to hit, all of that stuff. Okay. When we were working on the cowl, we were working with 24-inch circulars or larger, whatever you guys had on hand, right? Now we've already talked about, or when we were talking about the cowl at the start, we talked about circulars. We talked about how it works. You want to make sure that your circular needles that you use are smaller than the circumference of what you're making. So if you were making something that was 24 inches, you would not want to use a 24-inch circular because they would be the same. Your stitches would be really snug. It would be difficult to knit. You actually want something smaller. Okay. So our cowl, I don't know about you guys. I mean, I have not even measured mine. Let me see here. So my cowl, let's see, it's 17. So 17 plus 17 is 34. So it's 34 inches circumference. And I used a 24-inch circular. Does that make sense? Could I have used a 32-inch? Probably, but it probably wouldn't have been as comfortable as the 24-inch circular. So knowing that, and for all of you who are like, well, why can't I just use the needles I have, make this hat? That's why. We already talked about the circumference of a head is about 20 inches or 22, depending on what you're going to do. So the size needles you have on hand right now won't cut it unless you have even longer ones and you do something called magic loop, which is just another way, I don't know if technique is the right term. It's still knitting, but it's a way to use a longer circular as a shorter circular. It's called magic loop. That's something I'll talk about later on. So there's that. So when the new materials list comes out and it says, hey, you need 16-inch circulars, that's not me just saying, hey, go spend more money and buy more needles. Like, yeah, do I want you to do that? Absolutely. I want you to have everything you need as far as supplies on hand, but there's a genuine purpose for that. And there's a genuine purpose, as I mentioned, for having 2 different sizes. I did say that could you get by with one size? Absolutely. But generally, I want you to have those two sizes. Overall, though, you guys, I will be honest and tell you, if you have the ability to spend the money to get something that gives you the ability to have interchangeables or convertibles or anything along those lines that you can have, the needle and then change the different lengths of your needles and stuff, that those are really handy. There's some really great affordable ones out there. There's some that are a little bit more pricey out there. All of them are great needles, but that is why I have you needing the 16-inch circulars this time around. It's not just so that you can go buy more needles. There's a purpose for it. Along with that, it comes the double pointed needles. So the double pointed needles are what we have to transition to when our stitches get smaller, our circumference gets smaller than 16 inches, right? Because our hat's going to go down to way more than 16 inches. So we have to have tools to accommodate that. That's where the double pointed needles come in. Now, can you do what's called magic loop instead of double points? Absolutely. That's the way a lot of people will do them. There's even using two circulars. You can do that. However, I'm going to highly encourage you guys to get the double pointed needles, because this is the perfect project to introduce yourself to double points, because you have fabric already ready to go, working onto the double points. It'll make your transition to double points so much easier. So that is why you need those. Having said all of that, I'm going to let Chrissy jump in now and actually talk about some affordable needles out there, because we have a new sponsor this week and I'm going to let her chat. So I'm going to shut up. So that segue.
This month's sponsor is Jimmy Beans Wool, and they sent us their Jimmy's Smart Sticks. So they're interchangeable. The cool thing about these, and what I'm loving, is that they are a tape measure and needle in one, which I think is so cool, because I don't know about you, but I am constantly losing my measuring tape. I'm like always looking for it. It's shoved in a couch somewhere. It's very bad. But I'm always someone who wants to measure and make sure that I'm not, because I've been burned before. It's happened. I've not done gauge and I've been burned. So I am very, very careful about measuring. And so so I've already started this week's. These are my 16 inches, and you can see on here that my stitches fit really comfortably on here. I think if it was anything bigger, it would be very awkward. It would be really tight and hard for me to do that. So these are my 16s. I love them. I can see on here, it tells you the inches on each different section on here. And it even has marks on the cable of your inches. So they come in a great little pouch. There's lots of fun little tools in here too. We've got, it comes in sizes. Let me see what the smallest is. So the smallest size is so tiny, I can't even read it. Oh my word, that's really tiny. So 4. So it comes with a size 4, and then it goes up to an 11. So this is like a really versatile kit here with all these different needle sizes. And then it comes with multiple cables. So my 16, and then there's a medium size and a large one. I'm not sure what inches. I'll have to look. And then it's got these, and Marley, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these are just stoppers, right? Cable stoppers for the end. Okay. And then, or sorry, I thought you were saying something else. And
but I was on mute. So I was like, nobody can hear me. Yes, they are stoppers. So like, let's say you wanted to put something, okay, here's something cool. So sometimes if you were doing a sweater, you could put the stitches for your armhole on a holder. And let's say you have extra cords, because we all know I like to have extra cords, right? So what you could do is take your needles off your cords, put those stoppers on the cords, and leave the cord in there as a stitch holder. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
There's lots of different things you could do for those, but yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And then it's also got the keys, which remember I learned how to use. Okay. And I used them for these to make sure that they didn't come off. So, and then it comes with this little pouch. And then they also sent us, now these we would not use for this project, right? Right now we're making a hat. We need our circulars. But they also sent us these, I believe they're Knitter's Pride. Yes, they're Knitter's Pride, but these are the straight needles that Jimmy Beans offers. I love the color. So I'm a color girl, just like Marley. I love the rainbow of colors. So these are very colorful needles, both of them, but these are a nice sleek, these are metal. They have a nice little tip on the end of here at the stopper at the end. These I've noticed, and I was talking to Marley about this earlier, that I'm loving learning the different points, right? So now I'm at the point in my knitting journey that I know what the different points feel like on different needles. So my Chowgu were a little pointier at the end, a little sharper. Our Prim, if you remember, had that tulip bulb at the end. So that was really good for grabbing the yarn. I liked that as a beginner. I was able to snag that yarn a little easier because that tulip end. These are a little bit duller than the Chowgu, but definitely obviously sharper than the Prim because they don't have the tulip end. And when we get to signature next month, they're even sharper. These so far, I'm like being back to metal. I noticed at the end of my cowl, I noticed that they're not plastic. I don't really know what the material is that the Prim ones are made out of, but, it was a little bit slower, which I appreciated as a beginner, right? Because I needed to be able to go slow and make sure that I was getting my stitches on there, not flying off. Right. But I am appreciating being back on metal. I am really enjoying these. So Jimmy Beans is awesome. They also sent us some, maker bags and a pattern holder, which I don't have on me right now, but I will show you guys that next week. When we come on, I'll let you know what the bags look like. I've actually been using them. And I'll use it for my hat to hold it. They have a small pouch that they gave us that I'll use for that. And
my
then the
pouch is with my needles. As soon as you said pouch, I was like, well, that's where they are. So guys, they sent me the needles to you. Guys know this, right? I can't find them. I can't find them anywhere. They're here in this 14 square foot office somewhere. I have no idea where. I know they're together. They are. We've seen them, but the good news is, what'd you say?
They're together.
They're together.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. So the good news is Lindsay from Erin Lane Bags, you guys, is coming up here tomorrow to spend 3-4 days with me. And we're organizing my basement here. And so we will find them.
They'll be there.
I'm very excited. And total side note here, one thing that I want to talk about with Lindsay is I want to talk about doing a specific fabric for some bags with her to wrap up the BiCrafty games at the end of, not the BiCrafty games, the BiCrafty Bootcamp at the end of the knitters, so that you guys will have an option to buy something to commemorate it all, plus a shirt. I know everybody wants a shirt. Just, I'm total side note there.
I'm still working on the shirt, by the way. I know that I promised you all that I would get information. So I did get information last week. I talked to someone else. I am still working on it. So it's coming. I'm still working.
I have something on the news front for you too.
Oh, good.
So I will talk to you about that because we might have a way. Yeah, I'll talk to you later about that. But yeah, that's definitely something cool. So
okay, cool.
So that's the deal with the needles, y'all. Some fun stuff. You guys know, I mean, I love Laura Zander over at Jimmy Beans Wool. She's doing some amazing things. If you don't already know, Jimmy Beans Wool owns Delicue Bags. They also own Madeline Tosh Yarns, and Laura is just an amazing entrepreneur woman who is super supportive of everybody in the crafting community, and she's a visionary. She's fantastic. So when you're purchasing these needles, the Smart Sticks from Jimmy Beans, you're not only purchasing needles and stuff that are going to help your craft, to try out other needles, to try out different things. You're supporting an individual in the industry who really does care about you. So that's one of the biggest things I like working with Jimmy Beans Wool is I appreciate her story. I appreciate her. And I know Laura personally, like I have her cell phone number, like she's amazing. And I think, I mean, I don't know about you guys, like that's important to me. Like when I find out there are people in the community or communities, let's not say people, let's say community or companies that are not really supportive of our community or of people or are unkind, I don't want to put my money behind those people. So I'm telling you 100%, Jimmy Beans Wool is amazing. And I love everything about them. So I'm just going to throw that out there to you guys.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the story with them. So as you see me today cast on with different needles, that's why I can't find mine. And I had them at one point. I don't know where they have to be.
They disappeared.
They're here somewhere. They're here somewhere. So that's the story with the new materials list, because I know that people are probably going to ask, well, why can't I? Why this? Why that? That's the story there. I know I'm talking a lot today, guys, but this is a lot of vital information. This is
Yes.
important stuff that we would be learning in class together. Hopefully you're sitting there just kind of enjoying yourself, maybe casting on and doing some other stuff here. So as you continue on through the blog post, that's what it's called. As you continue through the blog post, you keep going on. Obviously, you have the crocheters tips, the knitters tips for crocheters, BiCrafty Community Complementary Hat Pattern. So you'll notice that I called it like not complimentary, like you're going to get compliments, but it's the complementary hat to your cowl. So this is the hat pattern that's not going to be matchy, but it's going to complement it. We might throw in maybe some seed stitch or something that will make it so it's like, oh, look, they're not matchy, but they go together. You know what I mean? So that's why this particular hat, I've called it the BiCrafty Community Complementary Hat Pattern. And it's really basic in the sense that it's written up very much like the matchy one, all the way through, that I have you doing the exact same brim as the matchy. And then you'll see that when it gets to the body, it says change to larger needles, knit 1 round. And that's where I'm going to have you stop. Okay. So change to larger needles, knit 1 round. So a couple things here. I want to go ahead. I want to cast on 16-inch circulars, and I want to discuss how you would change to larger needles. I might grab another project that I have on hand and really show you how easy it is to do that. It's nothing to do with slipping stitches over, have the possibility of dropping stitches. We're literally just going to drop the right needle that we usually have, like of the size 7s, and hold a size 8 in our right hand and knit off of our size 7 in our left hand. Like, it's that easy. So you don't have to do anything special, which is great. So the change to larger needles actually happens when you're doing that knit round. You're going to knit that round onto your size 8s. It's really that simple. Yeah. Any questions so far? I'm going to see here. Okay. So Chrissy, there's a couple questions about the needles. Is there a link to order directly from Jimmy Bean's Wool to order their needles?
I will have to get that for you. I'll have to connect with Catherine and have her put that up on the blog post.
Okay. Also, do they sell extra cords?
You know what? I don't know that. I'll have to email Alex and find out.
Okay. Diane is asking, what should the overall length of the hat be? And I don't know if she's talking about the height of the hat or not. It all sort of, my rule of thumb, when I'm designing hats, I like to have at least 6 inches from brim to before I start the crown, if not a little bit more. Like, that's, for me, those are the hats that fit me best. If I skimp on myself and go 5 inches, I feel like they're creeping up on my ears, and that drives me insane. So, I mean, here's the cool thing, y'all. I'm sure you've made crochet hats. Just measure one, measure what you like, and measure the overall, because the best thing to think about when you get to the crown portion, it really just starts to come. It doesn't add much more height. It just makes it so it comes in. Do you know what I mean? I wish that makes sense. I literally just picked up my desk and I moved the hat I had over here. And so I don't have one, of course. So I hopefully that helps. There's lots of hats out there you guys can check out as well. Let's see here. Diane says,
and even if you haven't crocheted a hat, even if you're a total new beginner and you've never even crocheted a hat, I'm sure you own a hat, right? Grab your favorite hat, the one you love that fits you the most, and measure that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Julia, while you're here, or Julia, I just want to tell you, thank you. Thank you. I think I've told you thank you before, but I want to tell you thank you again, just because I saw the card as I was cleaning up today. I just want to tell you thank you. Okay, let's see here. We have a bunch of extra cords. They're asking why Chic Sheep is being discontinued. You know what? Yarnspirations just decided they didn't want to continue it. That's it. Long story short, when Yarnspirations purchased Red Heart, the launch of my yarn kind of got sucked into this sort of cycle of it just never really took off. So nothing's wrong with the yarn per se. They just decided that it wasn't something they wanted to keep into their inventory. So what they have in inventory is what they have. So if you want it, guys, use my link, purchase it from yarnspirations.com. That's literally the best way to support me. I know that there's stuff available on Amazon and stuff. if you get it from yarnspirations.com, that's the best way to get it. And what you see there is what's available. Okay, let's see here. All right, I think we're good. Will the set have a 16-inch cord? I want to let you guys know cords are going to be smaller than what the overall size is because you have to account for the size of the needles. Okay, so when you're measuring from tip to tip, including the cord.
Yes, I was just, the only thing I was going to interject was this set from Jimmy Beans, the Smart Sticks. It actually says 16-inch on the cord. So it lets you know that when you put it on your needles, that will be your 16-inch, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, which is different than ChowGoo, guys.
Yes.
ChowGoo, I think it's 8-inch, and then you have your 4-inch needles, which gives you your 16. So that's something to point out. All right, so I'm gonna actually cast on now. We're gonna do some actual knitting, not just a whole bunch of lecture teaching.
Knit time.
Because you know how to do this. So now I see somebody said they have their iced coffee, needles, and everything ready to go.
Oh, yes. You're my girl.
So I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to cast on with my purple, and then I'm going to actually change colors and make my ribbing blue. So I'm going to knit around in purple, and then I'm going to change colors to blue and kind of show you, how easy that is, because it's super easy. You just add new yarn. All right, so I'm going to mute myself here and make it so that my screen is larger.
I'm going to mute me too, so I don't interrupt.
Oops. I hit the wrong button, sorry. All right, mute. Hopefully you guys are at speaker view. Speaker view? Okay. All right, so I only have a few more minutes here because I do have to take my son to football, and he's going to have to be there soon. So, as I said, I'm going to use 16-inch. These are the signature 16-inch, but because I can't find my others. Long tail cast on. You guys can wrap the yarn around your needle for 90 times if you want, but for me, I'm just going to guesstimate because why not? You guys know how to do the long tail cast on. So I'm going to just go ahead and get this on here. Show you one more time. Make sure you have your tail over here towards you. Your working yarn over here. Working yarn goes over your finger. Tail goes over your thumb. And you're going to begin to cast on. So you have your slingshot here. Go up your thumb, down your finger, through the window, off the thumb. And we haven't cast on in a hot minute, so this might be a good little refresher. Remember not to pull these too tight. It makes it kind of tricky to get through that first round, but don't keep them too loose at the same time. You just want them to be able to move nicely up and down the needle. So I'm just going to keep casting on here. And if you want to add a stitch marker, like every 20 stitches to keep track, you can. And I'm going to do 90. Some stitch markers here. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oops, that was 20. 2. 18, 20. 16, 20. So that's 80. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so let's get another marker here. Sparkle one. All right, so there's my 10. So I have 90 stitches. Look at that nice little tail. If you wanted to keep your tail, one thing you could do, I actually teach this in the knit along that starts tomorrow, is to do a little butterfly with it, just so that you don't have to cut it right away. You can cut it later. But you can use this for seaming if you were doing a sweater or something. Just kind of butterfly it just so it tucks out of the way, whatever. Okay. You guys know the drill. You want to make sure that you do not have any twist in your cast on, which is one of the reasons I love the long tail, because it allows us to easily check that because of this nice little ridge we have, right? So I have this nice ridge all the way around. Make sure it's not twisted. Perfect. When I pick it up, I want to make sure I'm knitting like so, in the sense that, here's how I think about it. I think about my cord that's holding my stitches. It's away from my body. And as I'm looking at my knitting, I'm looking at the outside, like the right side of my knitting. As I knit, I'm never looking at the inside. The inside is in here. I never want it to be like this. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you're going to be knitting inside out. We're going to knit this first round, and it's as easy as literally just start knitting. We're not going to do anything special. Just start knitting. And it's okay if this comes apart a little bit. That's what we use this cord for, or not cord, the extra string, just to seam it close at the end. It'll be just fine. Come around here, and I'm just going to knit this whole round. You guys know how to do this. I am curious, while I'm going through this, how many of you are doing continental style now? And how many of you are like, you know what, I tried it, and then I tried English, and I prefer English. Even though I am a crocheter, I prefer English. And that's fine if you do. You don't have to keep these in place if you don't want to. As you come up to them, you can get rid of them. It's just purely there to help you count. You don't even have to use them. This is where it's helpful when you're able to see the chat, Chrissy, because I'm like, I wonder what everybody's saying. And I can't look because I want to make sure I'm in frame.
I know. Next week, I'll be back on my laptop, so we'll be able to see comments next week.
Perfect. Get rid of that one. Okay, so I'm going to get back on here and make sure everybody, continental all the way, people are saying. All the way. I love it. I moved my camera today. It feels like it's like in the way for me. I don't like it's in a weird way, weird position. I don't know. All right, so I'm almost around. I'm at least halfway. Hey, the good news is it's not 140 stitches, so it's going to go faster. It's going to go faster. A lot of people are saying continental. That's great. Okay, you guys know how this works as far as jumping into knit one, purl one, ribbing. Right after this, I'm going to show you how you would change colors if you wanted to.
or add a new ball of yarn. It's the same thing. And it's so easy, guys. You literally just start knitting with the new color. You guys already know this. I think we talked about this in fixing mistakes. You had to cut out a knot, or you ran out of yarn, had a new ball. This is what you would do. All right, so I'm coming around, grab a new ball of yarn. And you do not have to do this as far as tying on your new color to your old color. I find it easier to do that. I even do that in crochet. And it's okay that this comes apart a little bit. Grab my new yarn. It's all right if I'm going to pull out yarn guts. I'm actually just going to break this apart, make it easy. I tie my new color onto my old color. I'm going to break this one because I don't want to carry it up. And and this is all said and done. I'm just going to start working with the new color. So I'm going to do knit one, and then purl one, knit one, and purl one. And there you go. Pretty easy, right? Okay, one last thing I want to show you guys. When it's time to change your needles. Okay, I'm just going to grab another needle. I know this is the same size needle, but let's pretend this was a different needle. What you would do, let's say it was time, you would not use this one, you know, as you're just knitting like this. You just pull this out of the way, grab your size 8s, and just start knitting onto your size 8s. Does that make sense? You just let that other one hang out there, and you would just start knitting on your size 8, right? So eventually all your stitches will go onto your size 8. This size 7 will be free of stitches. You can put it aside, but now you've transferred all your stitches over to your size 8 without possibly dropping stitches along the way. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's so much easier than I thought it would be too.
Yeah, it's so simple. Last thing, because I said I would do this. If you have, I can't find my like stitch counter thing. You guys know the metal thing where you can count how many stitches per inch. We just measured this thing. We know that it was 17 inches in half, so it was 34 circumference. And we know we have 144 stitches. So we could take 144 divided by 34 inches and get how many stitches per inch. Does that make sense? You guys with me on that? So if we took 140 stitches, divide it by 34 inches, so we're getting 4.11766 stitches per inch. And that's after blocking. Does that make sense? So like if I were to set down my tape measure, and the reason I'm looking at the seed stitch is because that was the gauge I gave you for the Matchy hat. But you could sit here and count 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches plus a little bit extra. That's your 0.11, right? After blocking. And you'll notice that my gauge was 4.5. So I knit this one. I knit this whole thing with size 7s. But I obviously didn't knit it the same as my other one a little bit. Anyways, that's how you would measure it. Like that's the easiest way is take what your total circumference of your cowl is, divide the total circumference, divide the stitches by your total circumference. And that'll give you how many stitches per inch for your entire cowl. You know what I mean? And you can use that for your matchy hat numbers. Did that make sense?
Yeah, and that's actually really a lot easier than I thought it would be too.
Well, it makes it easy because you don't have to sit there and actually like like what I just did with the tape measure and count things out. You can just be like, hey, here's my finished sample. I know it has 144 stitches. I know it measures 34 inches, so that you can calculate from there and move forward.
Yeah. And I think that even as crocheters, and we know we have like all this wealth of knowledge in crochet, I think we still make things more complicated than we think than they really are. You know,
they don't need to be that hard at all. They don't need to be that hard.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. I think what I could show you here, I don't think I need to go full screen here for this. I don't think. So this was my beginning of my cowl. You can see it, the cord just kind of fits right there, right? So I'm going to come back over here where it's coming out to make it look like the V. See how it pulls that together? I'm going to come back over here. I'm just trying to simulate the stitches here.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's almost like the duplicate stitch, like when you're weaving in ends. But now that looks like a perfect little join.
Yeah.
So all I do is I tuck this now to the inside. And I could do something as simple as just weaving this up. This is the inside knit column. So on the opposite side, if it's knit on this side, what does it look on the other side?
Like a purl.
Like a purl. So just by doing this, it's not going to show up on the other side, just kind of weaving it up like this a little bit. And then what I can do is I could split my yarn, kind of come back down, grabbing my wraps arounds. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Come down. And then I've woven that in.
Perfect.
So now you know how to finish. It just looks nice. It's a nice little finish.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. I got to go take Kate into football. I bet he's like, oh, he's over there waiting for me. I got to go.
He's watching you.
He's watching me. All right. So make sure as you're working on your hats, share with us on social media. Use hashtag BiCrafty Bootcamp, hashtag Marley Bird. You guys know this by now. I'm the Marley Bird on Instagram. I love seeing all of this, you guys. My task for you, all of you who are watching this here live or after the fact, when the video ends, I want you to go to the comments of the video. I want you to tell me what the favorite thing you've learned so far in BiCrafty Bootcamp. Leave that in the comments. We will randomly select a winner next week to get a free pattern from marleybird.com. Okay. So Chrissy, you're going to have to remind me of that. We're going to make sure you have to leave your comment in the comments of the video, not the live chat here. Those don't count. Leave your comment in the video. We'll randomly select a winner next week around this time, next Wednesday, and we'll go from there. All right.
Awesome sauce.
Okay. Bye, Chrissy.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.